Learning how verbs work in Portuguese is one of the biggest challenges you'll face as a learner. But by focusing specifically on how they're used within the context of the spoken language, we can take certain shortcuts that'll simplify the learning process and get you conversational faster. So in this tutorial, we're going to be covering pretty much all of the verb conjugations you'll need for everyday conversations. And we're going to be building from the ground up using tons of real world examples that will bring the concepts to life. With that said, I want to start our discussion of the present tense by showing you a short clip of Neymar, where he responds to a question about whether he believed his athletic abilities were a God-given gift.
Eu acho que sim, acho que é dom que Deus me deu.
He says, Eu acho que sim. I think so. Acho que é dom que Deus me deu. I think that it's a gift that God gave me. Now, I want to first draw your attention to the word acho. So, acho means I think, and it comes from the verb achar, which means to think. When Charles Oliveira was asked for a prediction on Conor McGregor's next fight, he said, Eu não acho, I don't think, que ele vai ganhar, that he's going to win. So most verbs in Portuguese end in AR, just like achar. For example, falar, which means to speak. Based on what you just saw, how would you say I speak? I speak is falo. More specifically, eu falo. Eu meaning I. So all you're doing is replacing the AR verb ending with an O, which is pronounced like a U. Falo. I speak English would be eu falo inglês.
Eu falo inglês.
Now, if you want to say he or she speaks, you'd say ele or ela fala. So here, you're just replacing the AR with an A, and that A is pronounced like the A in the words Cuba or sofa. Fala. He speaks Portuguese would be ele fala português.
Ele fala português.
To say you speak, it'd be você fala. So it's the same exact deal as with he or she speaks. You're just dropping the AR in falar and replacing it with an A. If you want to ask someone if they speak English, you'd say Você fala inglês?
Você fala inglês?
Now, to say we speak, it'd be a gente fala. So you conjugate it the same exact way as the he, she, as well as you form. And this goes for all of the verb forms that we'll be seeing. One thing that I wanted to point out is that in Portuguese, there are actually two ways of saying we. Nós, which is the standard form you see more in the written language, and a gente, which is the colloquial form.
A gente sempre quis, mostrar tudo que a gente aprendeu.
In this tutorial, we're going to be focusing on a gente because one, it's way more common in the spoken language, and two, it's easier to learn since you're just using the same conjugations as he, she, and you.
A gente fala inglês pouco como os irlandeses.
So nós comes with its own set of conjugations, as you'll see here in the phrase, nós falamos inglês, we speak English. And you'll eventually want to learn them. But it's not super critical to know right away for conversational purposes, and so it's something we can cover in a later video. To say they speak, first of all, there are two ways of saying they, eles and elas, if you're referring strictly to a group of females. So they speak would be eles or elas falam. Now here, you're replacing the AR with an AM, except that the AM is pronounced with this nasal sound. Falam. They speak really fast would be eles falam muito rápido.
Eles falam muito rápido.
And then you guys speak is vocês falam. So it's just the same AM ending as they. Falam. So summarizing the verb conjugations for falar in the present tense, we have falo, fala, and falam. Now let's switch back to the verb achar, to think. We saw that I think is eu acho.
Eu acho que é muito importante.
How would you say you think? Você acha. How about you guys think? Vocês acham. Now let's take a look at another AR verb, estudar, which means to study. How would you say I study? Eu estudo.
Faz 3 anos que eu estudo esse cara.
What about we study? A gente estuda. How would you say they study if you're referring to a group of females? Elas estudam. So this is how verbs that end in AR generally work in the present tense. If you're getting value out of this tutorial so far, go ahead and let me know by hitting that like button. Obrigado. Now, besides AR verbs like falar and achar, you've also got ones that end in ER, like viver, to live, and comer, to eat, as well as those that end in IR, as in decidir, to decide, and abrir, to open. Let's take a look at how you conjugate ER verbs in the present tense using viver as a model. I live is eu vivo.
Hoje eu vivo longe deles.
So just like for AR verbs, you're just replacing the ending with an O. He lives would be ele vive. Here, you're dropping the ER ending and replacing it with an E. Then they live is eles vivem. The ER gets replaced by this EM, which is pronounced em, vivem. And then for IR verbs, using decidir as a model, you've got eu decido, I decide. We decide would be a gente decide. And then they decide is eles decidem.
Eles decidem quem pode ou não trabalhar aqui.
So we see here that IR and ER verbs share the same exact verb endings in the present tense. So if pagar is to pay, how would you say I pay? Eu pago. If perder means to lose, how would you say they lose? Eles perdem. If the verb meaning to hear is ouvir, what would he hears be? Ele ouve. If trabalhar is to work, how would you say we work? A gente trabalha.
A gente trabalha o ano inteiro.
In this post from Edson Barbosa, he says, algumas vezes a gente trabalha o corpo, sometimes we work the body. Algumas vezes a gente trabalha a mente, sometimes we work the mind. Now, in addition to having changes to the verb ending, there are certain verbs that have pronunciation changes in the present tense as well. Let's take the verb comer as an example. The O in comer is pronounced with a closed O, which is like the O in the English word cold. The O in como, I eat, is also pronounced with a closed O, so nothing changes here. But now let's take a look at how the O is pronounced in the next two forms. Come
Ele come.
and comem.
É fruto que eles comem muito.
So here, the pronunciation changes from a closed O to an open O, which is like the A in awesome. Since it isn't always obvious from the spelling when an O should be pronounced as an open O like this, just for purposes of this tutorial, we're going to be using this open O symbol to indicate that we need to pronounce it as A as in awesome. So a few other ER verbs that follow the same type of pronunciation pattern as comer are correr, to run. So you have corro, I run, which is pronounced with a closed O. But in the next two forms, the pronunciation of the O changes to an open O. Corre and correm.
Eles correm o tempo todo.
And the same thing goes for escolher, to choose. Escolho, escolhe, and escolhem. Now let's take a look at a few AR verbs. With the verb gostar, to like, it's gosto.
Gosto de brincar, gosto de dar risada, gosto que todo mundo se dê bem.
Gosta.
Ela gosta de ficar em casa lendo livro.
And gostam. So here, we see how the pronunciation of the O changes from a closed to open in the I form as well. So I like is eu gosto.
Ela já não gosta mais de mim.
Por quê? Por quê?
Mas eu gosto dela mesmo assim.
Not gosto. Gosto means taste. Just a few of many other verbs that follow this pattern are jogar, to play, jogo, joga.
Ele dança, ele joga.
And jogam. And adorar, to love. Adoro,
Eu adoro Paulo Coelho. É meu escritor favorito.
adora, and adoram. So that was the first type of pronunciation change we see in the present tense, where the pronunciation of the O changes from close to open. The other type is where the pronunciation of the E changes from a closed E, which is like the E sound in say, to an open E, which is like the E sound in the word air. Let's check out a few examples of this. Using the verb beber, to drink, as an example, the E in beber is pronounced with a closed E, and it stays closed in the I form. Eu bebo, I drink. But then it changes to an open E in the next two forms, bebe,
Ele fuma, ele bebe.
and bebem. So just as a learning tool to help us nail the correct pronunciation, we're going to use this open E symbol to indicate that we need to pronounce it as E, as in air, keeping in mind that it's really spelled with a regular E. Another ER verb that follows the same pattern as beber is receber, to receive. So you have recebo, pronounced with a closed E, then recebe and recebem are pronounced with an open E. And the same thing goes for escrever, to write. Escrevo, escreve, and escrevem.
Como é que eles escrevem essas coisas?
Now let's take a look at some AR verbs. With the verb esperar, to hope, it's espero, espera, and esperam. So here, the pronunciation of the E changes from closed to open in the I form as well. I hope is eu espero.
Espero que a gente possa fazer uma grande temporada.
Other verbs that follow this pattern are levar, to take or carry, levo, leva, and levam, and começar, to start. Começo, começa, and começam. So you might be asking, how are you supposed to know which verbs have these pronunciation changes? And the answer is, you just have to learn which ones have it. Now, I'll have a PDF guide for this tutorial available for download, and it'll include a list of the most common verbs that have these pronunciation changes. Now let's talk about the past tense. I spoke is eu falei. She spoke, ela falou. You guys spoke, vocês falaram. Once again, that AM is pronounced ão. Falaram.
Lembrei das pessoas que falaram que eu nunca ia chegar, irmão.
Let's take a look at achar. I thought is eu achei. You thought, você achou. They thought, eles acharam. What would the three conjugations for estudar be? Estudei, estudou, and estudaram. So to conjugate a verb that ends in AR in the past tense, all you do is replace the AR with either A, O, or aram. Now let's take a look at ER verbs. I ate is eu comi.
Por que eu comi tanto?
We ate, a gente comeu. You guys ate, vocês comeram. On to IR verbs. I decided is eu decidi. She decided, ela decidiu. They decided, eles decidiram.
Eles decidiram ser autossuficientes.
So whereas the endings for ER verbs are I, eu, and eram, the ones for IR verbs are I, iu, and irão. So if jogar is to play, how would you say you played? Você jogou. If ler means to read, how would you say they read? Eles leram. If the verb meaning to leave is sair, what would she left be? Ela saiu. If chorar is to cry, how would you say I cried? Eu chorei.
Não gostei, sofri bastante, chorei.
In this post from Vinicius Jr. after Brazil lost in the World Cup, he says, chorei no campo, I cried on the field. Chorei no vestiário, I cried in the locker room. Chorei sozinho no avião, I cried by myself on the plane. Chorei ao chegar em casa, I cried when I got home. So in Portuguese, there are two main past tenses. What we just saw is called the preterite, and it's used to describe completed past actions. For example, eu falei com ele ontem. I spoke with him yesterday. So it pretty much corresponds to the simple past in English. Now, the other past tense is the imperfect, and it expresses ongoing or repeated actions in the past with no clear end. An example of this is eu falava com ele todos os dias. I used to speak with him every day. Let's take a look at how the imperfect is formed. For AR verbs, the two verb endings you need to know are ava, as in eu falava, I would, or I used to speak.
Que na época eu não falava muito inglês.
And then avam, as in eles falavam. For verbs that end in ER, like comer, it's ia, as in ele comia, he would or he used to eat, and iam, as in vocês comiam.
No caminho, eles comiam o que encontravam.
And then IR verbs share the same exact endings as ER verbs. Decidia and decidiam. So if chegar is to arrive, how would you say we would arrive or we used to arrive? A gente chegava. If treinar means to train, how would you say I would train or I used to train? Eu treinava.
Então eu treinava mais que todo mundo, eu chegava mais cedo que todo mundo.
If correr is to run, what would they used to run be? Eles corriam. If assistir is to watch, how would you say I would watch or I used to watch? Eu assistia.
Assistia todos os filmes.
There's a classic Brazilian song called Gostava Tanto de Você. I like you so much. Gostava being the imperfect tense of the verb gostar.
Gostava tanto de você. Gostava tanto de você.
Now, I want to come back to the preterite tense for a moment. So the preterite is also used to express the English present perfect. In other words, you would use it to say, I have spoken or I have eaten, etc. And it's often indicated with já, which means already or yet. For example, eu já falei com ele. I've spoken with him. Literally, I already spoke with him. Você já comeu? Have you eaten? Literally, did you already eat? Eu nunca esqueci de onde eu vim. I've never forgotten where I came from.
Eu nunca esqueci de onde eu vim.
Now let's learn how to talk about the future. So the true future tense isn't used all that much in the spoken language. So we're not going to be covering that in this tutorial. In conversational Portuguese, there are two much more common ways of expressing the future. The first is just the simple present tense when the future is implied by context. For example, amanhã eu falo com ele. Tomorrow I'll talk with him. The other way is by taking the present tense of the verb ir, which means to go, plus the infinitive, or the basic neutral form of the verb. In other words, what you're literally saying is, I'm going to speak, or I'm going to eat, etc. For example, I will speak would be eu vou falar. Literally, I'm going to speak.
E eu vou falar disso já já.
She will speak would be ela vai falar. They will speak would be eles vão falar. And then for ER and IR verbs, it works exactly the same way. It'll always be vou, vai, or vão plus the verb. So if tentar is to try, how would you say I'm going to or I will try? Eu vou tentar. If amar means to love, how would you say you're going to love it? Você vai amar. If aprender is to learn, how would you say you guys are going to learn? Vocês vão aprender. If pedir means to ask for, how would you say we are going to ask for? A gente vai pedir.
Eu vou cantar essa música.
Now let's talk about the conditional tense. How do we talk about things that we would hypothetically do? In Portuguese, this is super simple. All you do is add either ia or iam to the end of the verb. So I would speak would be eu falaria. They would speak, eles falariam. And the same goes for ER and IR verbs. With comer, it'd be comeria and comeriam. And then decidir becomes decidiria and decidiriam. So if morar is to live, how would you say you would live? Você moraria. If escrever means to write, how would you say he would write? Ele escreveria. If voltar is to go back, what would I would go back be? Eu voltaria.
Você moraria lá? Ah, eu não voltaria para morar.
If abrir means to open, how would you say you guys would open? Vocês abririam. Now, the conditional tense does sound slightly more formal than the next two alternatives we'll see, but it's still used quite a bit in the spoken language, so you definitely want to know it. For example, se eu fosse você, eu falaria com ele. If I were you, I would speak with him. This is standard textbook Portuguese. That said, in the spoken language, you'll very often hear people using the imperfect tense to express the same idea. So in this example, falaria would get replaced by falava. Se eu fosse você, eu falava com ele. Another way of saying this would be with the imperfect of ir plus the infinitive. Se eu fosse você, eu ia falar com ele.
Se a gente comesse carne na Índia, a gente ia precisar de 4 planetas Terra.
Now we're going to move on to a special verb form called the subjunctive, which you use to express uncertain or hypothetical situations. Let's take a look at the phrase, ele fala inglês. He speaks English. At least in our minds, this is a fact. It's a true statement. But what happens if we want to say, I hope that he speaks English? In this case, him speaking English might not necessarily be true. We don't know. It's just something that we're hoping is true. So in Portuguese, to reflect this uncertainty, you'd say, eu espero que ele fale inglês. So it's no longer fala, but now you'd say fale, which is a subjunctive form of the verb falar. More specifically, the present subjunctive, since the main verb espero is in the present tense. So how do we form the present subjunctive? For AR verbs, you're either going to replace the ER with an E, in this case, fale, or an EM, falem. And then for ER and IR verbs, it's the opposite. You replace the ending with either an A, as in coma and decida, or an AM, comam and decidam. Just a few common phrases that you'll need to follow up with the subjunctive are eu espero que, I hope that.
Espero que a gente possa fazer uma grande temporada.
Eu quero que, I want.
Eu quero que elas falem comigo.
And é possível que, it's possible that. So you can see the common thread between these phrases is that whatever you say after isn't certain to happen or be true. And that's why they trigger the subjunctive. For example, eu quero que você fale com ele. I want you to speak with him. Again, since this is just a hypothetical that I'm posing, I'd use the subjunctive. More specifically, the present subjunctive, since my initial verb, quero, is in the present tense. So that was the present subjunctive, which we generally use when we're talking in the present tense. But what if instead of saying, I want you to speak with him, we want to phrase it in the past tense and say, I wanted you to speak with him. In that case, we'd use the past subjunctive. So you'd say, eu queria que você falasse com ele. Falasse being the past subjunctive, since you're speaking in the past tense with queria. For AR verbs, the verb endings are assi, as in falasse, and assem, as in falassem. For ER verbs, you've got esse, as in comesse, and then essem, as in comessem. And then finally, for IR verbs, you have isse, as in decidisse, and then issem, as in decidissem. Another super common use of the past subjunctive is in contrary to fact statements, like if you spoke English, se você falasse inglês.
O Aldo teria vendido muito melhor a luta dele com o McGregor se ele falasse inglês.
If they ate meat, se eles comessem carne.
Se a gente comesse carne na Índia, a gente ia precisar de 4 planetas Terra.
If I decided to study, se eu decidisse estudar. And this is often followed by the conditional tense, which we'll see a lot in our examples later. Now, in addition to the present and past subjunctives, there's also a future subjunctive that we use when we're talking about something that may or may not happen in the future. Let's take, for example, the phrase, if they speak English, are you going to understand? Now, in this context, if they speak English is referring to a hypothetical event in the future. And so in Portuguese, this would trigger the future subjunctive, which in this case would be Se eles falarem inglês, você vai entender. Falarem being the future subjunctive of falar. So the conjugations for the future subjunctive are super easy. For I, you, he, she, and we, nothing changes. So in this case, it's just falar. For they and you guys, you just add an EM at the end. Falarem.
Se eles falarem do meu cabelo, eu não volto lá mais nunca.
And the same goes for ER and IR verbs. You've got comer and comerem, and then decidir and decidirem. Let's take a look at some common use cases for the future subjunctive. Se eu ficar, if I stay. Quando vocês terminarem, when you guys finish. Depois que eles voltarem, after they get back. Assim que a gente chegar, as soon as we arrive. So you see, what these phrases have in common is that they're referring to an action that hasn't yet happened, but that may happen in the future. So what we just covered are general conjugation patterns that apply to most verbs in Portuguese, also known as regular verbs. Now, there's a small group of verbs that we're going to cover, which I call the dirty dozen, that don't follow a lot of the patterns that we just saw. Each one has its own unique set of conjugations that you'll just have to learn separately. But they're also some of the most important verbs to know. The first in the dirty dozen is the verb ter, which generally means to have. In the present tense, you have tenho.
Eu tenho só 28 anos, eu tenho uma vida toda pela frente e eu tenho muito para aprender na minha vida.
Tem and tem. So these two words are pronounced the same way. Tem. For example, eu tenho 2 irmãos. I have 2 brothers. Você tem irmãos? Do you have siblings? Eles têm 3 cachorros. They have 3 dogs. In the past preterite, tive, teve, and tiveram. Ontem eu tive uma reunião. Yesterday I had a meeting. Ela teve que voltar ontem. She had to go back yesterday. Eles tiveram uma experiência incrível. They had an incredible experience. In the past imperfect, you got tinha.
A galera começou a ver que eu tinha algo diferente.
And tinham. Eu tinha que estudar todos os dias. I would or used to have to study every day. Eles tinham 2 carros. They used to have 2 cars. To express the future, vou ter, vai ter, and vão ter. Eu vou ter que estudar mais. I will or I'm gonna have to study more. A gente vai ter muito trabalho. We're going to have a lot of work. Vocês vão ter uma experiência incrível. You guys are going to have an incredible experience. For the conditional, you've got teria and teriam. Se eu falasse português, teria mais oportunidades. If I spoke Portuguese, I'd have more opportunities. Se eles trabalhassem mais, teriam mais dinheiro. If they worked more, they'd have more money. For the present subjunctive, you've got tenha and tenham. Eu espero que ela não tenha namorado. I hope that she doesn't have a boyfriend. Eu duvido que eles tenham dinheiro. I doubt that they have money. In the past subjunctive, you have tivesse and tivessem. Se eu tivesse dinheiro, compraria uma casa. If I had money, I would buy a house.
Como eu faria se eu tivesse uma chance?
Se vocês tivessem mais tempo, aprenderiam uma nova língua? If you guys had more time, would you learn a new language? In the future subjunctive, it's tiver and tiverem. Quando eu tiver tempo, vou visitar São Paulo. When I have time, I'm going to visit São Paulo. Se eles tiverem que estudar, vão ficar em casa. If they have to study, they'll stay at home. The verb ter is also used as an auxiliary verb in compound tenses. Much like in English, how have is used in compound tenses like I have spoken, I had spoken, etc. Let's take a look at how you'd say that you have been doing something, as in I have been speaking. In this example, you'd say eu tenho falado. So you're just taking the present tense of ter and combining it with the past participle of the verb. This is a little tricky because if you translate it word for word, tenho is I have, and then falado would be spoken. But it doesn't mean I have spoken. It really means I have been speaking. You're implying that it's been ongoing for some time.
Eu tenho falado sobre isso nos últimos anos.
If you'll recall, I have spoken would be eu já falei. Literally, I already spoke. Compare that to eu tenho falado. I have been speaking. So we have tenho, tem, and tem combined with the past participle of the verb. In this case, falado, comido, and decidido. So generally speaking, the past participle for AR verbs is formed by replacing the AR with ado. So falar becomes falado. And then for ER and IR verbs, you're just replacing the ending with ido, as in comido and decidido. If the verb desafinar means to be out of tune or off key, what would its past participle be? Desafinado, which is the name of a very famous song by Tom Jobim.
E no peito dos desafinados, no fundo do peito bate calado. No peito dos desafinados também bate coração.
That said, there are some verbs that have irregular past participles, meaning they don't follow the patterns we just saw. Some of the more common ones are aberto, open, from the verb abrir, to open. Escrito, written, from the verb escrever, to write. Feito, done, from the verb fazer, to do. Visto, seen, from the verb ver, to see. And vindo, come, from the verb vir, to come. So if ajudar is to help, how would you say I have been helping? Eu tenho ajudado. If correr means to run, how would you say you have been running? Você tem corrido. If pedir is to ask for, how would you say they have been asking for? Eles têm pedido. Now let's talk about how you'd say that you had done something, as in I had spoken. In this example, you'd say eu tinha falado. So here, you're taking the past imperfect tense of ter and combining it with the past participle. So it's either going to be tinha or tinham plus the past participle, falado, comido, and decidido. So if fechar is to close, how would you say I had closed? Eu tinha fechado. If assistir means to watch, how would you say they had watched? Eles tinham assistido. If you want to say that you would have done something, as in I would have spoken, you'd say eu teria falado. So in this case, you're taking the conditional tense of ter and combining it with the past participle. So it's either teria or teriam, falado, comido, and decidido.
O Aldo teria vendido muito melhor a luta dele com o McGregor se ele falasse inglês.
If mudar is to change, how would you say I would have changed? Eu teria mudado.
Eu não teria mudado nada.
If seguir means to follow, how would you say you guys would have followed? Vocês teriam seguido. Let's take a look at this sentence for a minute. Eu espero que você fale com ele. I hope that you speak with him. So earlier, we talked about how when we talk about something that may or may not happen, we use this special verb form called the subjunctive. But what if instead of saying, I hope that you speak, we want to say, I hope that you spoke or have spoken? In this case, it would be, eu espero que você tenha falado com ele. Tenha, as we saw earlier, being the present subjunctive of ter. Here, it's going to be either tenha or tenham plus the past participle. One of the most common uses of this is in the phrase, espero que você tenha gostado. I hope you liked it.
Espero que você tenha gostado do vídeo.
So we saw earlier how the past subjunctive is used when you're making a general hypothetical or contrary to fact statement, as in, se você falasse inglês, if you spoke English. But what if we wanted to say, if you had spoken English, referring to a specific action that could have happened but didn't? In that case, we'd say, se você tivesse falado inglês. So you'd either take the past subjunctive of ter, tivesse or tivessem, combined with the past participle. Se a gente tivesse comido mais, if we'd eaten more. Se vocês tivessem decidido ficar em casa, if you guys had decided to stay at home.
Se você não tivesse falado nada, se vocês não tivessem divulgado esses tweets, eles teriam sido vistos por quase ninguém.
The second verb in the Dirty Dozen is estar, which generally means to be and is used to describe temporary states. In the present tense, you have estou, está, and estão. Now, in the spoken language, people will usually just drop the es and say tô, tá, and tão.
E hoje eu tô no melhor shape da minha vida.
For example, eu estou em São Paulo. I'm in São Paulo. Você está cansado? Are you tired? Eles estão animados. They're excited. But in everyday speech, the es usually gets dropped. And so what you'll actually hear people say is, eu tô em São Paulo. Você tá cansado? Eles tão animados. In the past preterite, estive, esteve, and estiveram. Eu estive no Brasil ano passado. I was in Brazil last year. Ela esteve doente a semana inteira. She was sick the entire week. Eles já estiveram no Rio 3 vezes. They've been to Rio 3 times. Once again, the es usually gets dropped in the spoken language, so you'll hear eu tive, ela teve, and eles tiveram. In the past imperfect, estava and estavam. Eu estava, or eu tava, muito cansado. I was really tired.
Eu já estava decidido a cantar.
Eles estavam, or eles estavam, animados. They were excited. To express the future, we'd say vou estar, vai estar, or vão estar. In the spoken language, estar itself often gets shortened to just tá. So you'll hear people say vou tá,
Com certeza não vou estar na Copa do Mundo.
vai tá, and vão tá. Eu vou estar na praia, or eu vou tá na praia. I'm going to be at the beach. A gente vai estar lá, or a gente vai tá lá. We're gonna be there. Vocês vão estar muito cansados, or vocês vão estar muito cansados. In the conditional, estaria and estariam. Se eu fosse você, eu estaria preocupado. If I were you, I would be worried.
Se não fossem eles, talvez a gente nem estaria aqui.
Se eles não tivessem que estudar, estariam aqui. If they didn't have to work, they'd be here. In the present subjunctive, we have esteja and estejam. Espero que esteja tudo bem com você. I hope that everything is well with you. Espero que vocês estejam bem. I hope that you guys are well or doing well. In the past subjunctive, estivesse and estivessem. Se você estivesse aqui comigo, if you were here with me. Se eles estivessem no Brasil, if they were in Brazil. Then in the future subjunctive, estiver and estiverem. Quando eu estiver no Brasil, vou visitar meu amigo. When I'm in Brazil, I'm going to visit my friend. Quando vocês estiverem em Los Angeles, me avisem. When you guys are in Los Angeles, let me know. Again, in everyday speech, people will usually just drop the ES here and just say tiver and tiverem.
Se não tiver jogando bem aqui no Barcelona, não tiver mostrando bom trabalho, com certeza não vou estar na Copa do Mundo.
Now, estar is also used as an auxiliary verb in continuous tenses, like in English how you'd say, I am speaking or I was speaking, when you want to emphasize that something is in progress at a specific point in time. Let's take a look at how estar is used to say, I'm speaking, I'm eating, I'm deciding, etc. To say, I'm speaking, you'd say, eu estou or eu tô falando. So you're just taking the present tense of estar and combining it with the gerund of the verb, which is like the equivalent of the ing verb form in English, like speaking or eating, etc. And to form the gerund, all you do is replace the final R with NDO. And this goes for all verbs. So falar becomes falando, comer, comendo, decidir, decidindo. There's a song by Tom Jobim called Falando de Amor, speaking of love. So I'm speaking would be eu estou or eu tô falando. He's eating would be ele está or tá comendo. And then they're deciding would be eles estão or tão decidindo. And the same thing goes for the past continuous as well. So I was speaking, eu estava or eu tava falando. They were eating, eles estavam or tavam comendo. Verb number 3 in the Dirty Dozen is ir, which means to go. In the present tense, these should look familiar. You've got vou, vai, and vão. Now, I did want to point out the nos form here, vamos, because it's actually very common in the spoken language. So you'll hear both a gente vai as well as vamos in conversational Portuguese to say we go. Eu vou pra academia todos os dias. I go to the gym every day. Você vai para Curitiba? Are you going to Curitiba? Eles vão para aula todos os dias. They go to class every day. In the past preterite, you have fui, foi, and foram. Eu fui pra academia. I went to the gym.
Quando eu fui para os Estados Unidos, eu comprei para minha filha.
Você foi pra Curitiba? Did you go to Curitiba? Eles foram pra aula. They went to class. In the past imperfect, there's ia and iam. Eu ia pra academia todos os dias. I would or used to go to the gym every day.
Eu ia fazer medicina, eu não ia ser ator.
Eles iam pra aula todos os dias. They would or used to go to class every day. Now, to express the future with ir, you're basically just using the present tense. Since it would be redundant to use ir twice, all you really need to say is vou, vai, or vão. For the conditional, you've got iria and iriam. Se eu fosse você, eu não iria. If I were you, I wouldn't go. Se eles pudessem, iriam todos os dias. If they could, they would go every day. In the present subjunctive, you've got vá and vão. Eu quero que você vá também. I want you to go too. Eu espero que eles vão. I hope that they go. For the past subjunctive, fosse and fossem. Se eu fosse para o Brasil, teria que aprender português. If I went to Brazil, I would have to learn Portuguese. Eu não queria que eles fossem. I didn't want them to go. In the future subjunctive, we have for and forem. Se ele for, eu não vou. If he goes, I'm not going. Se vocês forem, me avisem. If you guys go, let me know. The fourth verb on the list is ser, which, like estar, can also be translated as to be, but describes more permanent states or longer-lasting characteristics. In the present tense, there's sou.
Eu sou cara muito feliz.
É and são. Eu sou de Los Angeles. I'm from Los Angeles.
Eu sou de Petrópolis.
Você é brasileiro? Are you Brazilian? Eles são altos. They're tall. In the past preterite, fui, foi, and foram. So same conjugations as the verb ir. Eu fui a primeira pessoa a chegar. I was the first person to arrive. Foi uma experiência incrível. It was an incredible experience. Eles foram muito legais comigo. They were really nice to me. In the past imperfect, era and eram. These are used a lot to describe how someone or something was in the past. Ele era muito alto. He was really tall.
Tá, era uma coisa que eu gostava, que eu fazia porque eu amava.
Eles eram bons amigos. They were good friends. To express the future, vou ser, vai ser, and vão ser. Eu vou ser mais disciplinado. I'm going to be more disciplined. Vai ser muito difícil. It's going to be really hard. Eles vão ser bem-sucedidos. They're going to be successful. For the conditional, you have seria and seriam. Seria muito legal. That would be really cool. Eles seriam os candidatos perfeitos. They would be the perfect candidates. In the present subjunctive, seja and sejam. quero que ele seja muito feliz. I want him to be really happy.
Eu quero que ele seja muito feliz.
Espero que eles sejam legais. I hope that they're cool. For the past subjunctive, we have fosse and fossem. Se eu fosse rico, eu viajaria pelo mundo. If I were rich, I would travel around the world. Se todos fossem iguais a você. If everyone were just like you. Which is actually a song by Tom Jobim.
Se todos fossem iguais a você.
In the future subjunctive, we have for and forem. Se eu for escolhido, eu vou. If I'm chosen, I'll go. Se eles forem aceitos, eles vão. If they get accepted, they'll go. Verb number 5 of the Dirty Dozen is fazer, to do. Starting with the present tense, faço, faz, and fazem. Eu faço yoga quase todos os dias. I do yoga almost every day. Você faz jiu-jitsu? Do you do jiu-jitsu? Eles sempre fazem isso. They always do that. Then in the past preterite, fiz, fez, and fizeram. Eu não fiz nada. I didn't do anything. O que ele fez? What did he do? Eles nunca fizeram isso. They never did that. The past imperfect, fazia, faziam. Eu fazia yoga quase todos os dias. I would or used to do yoga almost every day. Eles sempre faziam isso. They would or used to always do that. For the future, vou, vai, vão fazer. Eu vou fazer yoga amanhã. I'm gonna do yoga tomorrow. O que a gente vai fazer? What are we going to do? Eles não vão fazer nada. They're not gonna do anything. In the conditional, you've got faria and fariam. O que você faria nessa situação? What would you do in that situation?
Como eu faria se eu tivesse uma chance?
Eles nunca fariam isso. They would never do that. This is the thumbnail of a video where it quotes UFC fighter Gilbert Burns as saying, se eu fosse o Charles do Bronx, if I were Charles do Bronx, as in Charles Oliveira, não faria isso. I wouldn't do that. In the present subjunctive, we have faça and façam. Eu espero que ele não faça isso. I hope that he doesn't do that. Eu não quero que vocês façam isso. I don't want you guys to do that. For the past subjunctive, you've got fizesse and fizessem. Eu não queria que você fizesse isso. I didn't want you to do that.
Eu já estava decidido a cantar no próximo show que eu fizesse.
Eu não esperava que eles fizessem isso. I didn't expect them to do that. And then in the future subjunctive, fizer and fizerem.
No próximo show que eu fizer, eu vou cantar essa música.
Se eu fizer yoga amanhã, te aviso. If I do yoga tomorrow, I'll let you know. Se eles fizerem yoga amanhã, vão me avisar. If they do yoga tomorrow, they'll let me know. Number 6 on our list is dar, which generally means to give, but is used in a ton of different contexts. In the present, you have dou, dá, and dão. Eu sempre dou o meu melhor. I always give my best. Você dá aula? Do you give lessons? Eles dão muito dinheiro. They give a lot of money. The past preterite, they, deu, and deram. Eu dei o meu melhor. I gave my best. A gente deu um presente para ele. We gave him a present. Eles deram muito dinheiro. They gave a lot of money. In the past imperfect, we have dava and davam. Eu dava aula de inglês. I would or used to give English lessons. Eles me davam muito dinheiro. They would or used to give me a lot of money. To express the future, again, vou, vai, vão dar. In the conditional, daria and dariam. Eu não daria dinheiro para ele. I wouldn't give him money.
Tem alguém que daria tudo para estar no seu lugar.
Eles dariam tudo por ela. They would give anything for her. The present subjunctive, de and deem. Eu espero que tudo dê certo. I hope that everything works out. Eu quero que vocês deem uma olhada. I want you guys to take a look. In the past subjunctive, you have desse and dessem. Se eu desse dinheiro para ele, if I gave him money, eu não queria que eles me dessem dinheiro. I didn't want them to give me money. And in the future subjunctive, der and derem. Se eu der dinheiro para ele, vai gastar tudo. If I give him money, he's gonna spend everything. Se vocês me derem uma chance, vou fazer meu melhor. If you guys give me a chance, I'll do my best. Number 7 of the Dirty Dozen is the verb vir, which means to come. In the present tense, we've got venho, vem, and vem. So both of these are pronounced the same way. Vem. Eu venho aqui todos os dias. I come here every day. Você vem amanhã? Are you coming tomorrow? Eles vêm hoje. They're coming today. In the past preterite, vim, veio, and vieram. Eu vim aqui ontem. I came here yesterday.
Eu vim para o Rio para estudar.
Você veio ontem? Did you come yesterday? Eles vieram para aprender português. They came to learn Portuguese. The past imperfect, vinha and vinham. Eu vinha aqui todos os dias. I would or used to come here every day. Vocês vinham aqui todos os dias? You guys would or used to come here every day? In the future, vou, vai, and vão vir. For the conditional, it's viria and viriam. Se eu pudesse, viria aqui todos os dias. If I could, I'd come here every day. Se eles pudessem, viriam aqui todos os dias. If they could, they'd come here every day. In the present subjunctive, we've got venha and venham. Eu espero que ele venha. I hope that he comes. Eu quero que eles venham. I want them to come. For the past subjunctive, you have viesse and viessem. Eu esperava que ele viesse. I expected him to come. Eu queria que vocês viessem. I wanted you guys to come. Then in the future subjunctive, it's vier and vierem. Se ele vier amanhã, vou ficar muito feliz. If he comes tomorrow, I'm going to be really happy. Se vocês vierem, vou ficar muito feliz. If you guys come, I'm going to be really happy. Verb number 8 is poder, to be able to. In the present tense, you've got posso, pode, and podem. Just a reminder that we're only using this pink symbol as a tool to help remind us that it should be pronounced with an open O, as in the A in awesome. The standard spelling is just with a regular O. Eu posso vir amanhã. I can come tomorrow. Você pode vir hoje? Can you come today? Eles não podem vir. They can't come.
Os olhos já não podem ver coisas que só o coração pode entender.
In the past preterite, we have pude, pôde, and puderam. Eu pude convencer o Marco. I was able to convince Marco.
Deus me protegeu e eu pude voltar a jogar futebol.
Ele não pôde ir porque estava doente. He wasn't able to go because he was sick. Eles não puderam salvar a menina. They weren't able to save the girl. So when the preterite of poder is used, it tells us whether or not the subject succeeded in doing whatever it was they were trying to do. In the past imperfect, you've got podia and podiam. Eu achava que podia convencer o Marco. I thought that I could convince Marco. Eles não podiam salvar a menina. They couldn't save the girl. Now, whereas the preterite of poder tells us whether someone actually succeeded in doing something, in the imperfect tense, it only tells us whether they were capable of doing it. In the future, vou, vai, and vão poder. For the conditional, we've got poderia and poderiam. Você poderia me ajudar? Would you be able to help me? Eles poderiam te ajudar. They would be able to help you. The present subjunctive, possa and possam. Eu espero que você possa fazer. I hope that you're able to do it.
Espero que a gente possa fazer uma grande temporada, que a gente possa conseguir vários títulos também.
Eu espero que eles possam ficar. I hope that they're able to stay. In the past subjunctive, you have pudesse and pudessem. Se eu pudesse, eu moraria em Paris. If I could, I would live in Paris.
Se eu pudesse por dia.
Se vocês pudessem, morariam no Rio? If you guys could, would you guys live in Rio? Then the future subjunctive, puder and puderem. Quando você puder, me liga. When you can, give me a call. Eles vão vir assim que puderem. They'll come as soon as they can. Number 9 on our list is querer, to want. In the present tense, you have quero, quer, and querem. Eu quero aprender português. I want to learn Portuguese. A gente quer ir pro Brasil. We want to go to Brazil.
Se você quer ser minha namorada.
Vocês querem vir comigo? Do you guys want to come with me? For the past preterite, quis and quiseram. Eu sempre quis aprender português. I've always wanted to learn Portuguese.
Desde moleque, eu sempre quis ser fotógrafo.
Eles sempre quiseram visitar Nova York. They've always wanted to visit New York. In the past imperfect, there's queria, and queriam. Eu queria te perguntar uma coisa. I wanted to ask you something. Eles queriam te conhecer. They wanted to meet you. To express the future, vou, vai, and vão querer. Now, for the conditional, it's technically quereria and quereriam, but this is another verb where people tend to just replace with the imperfect in the spoken language. In the present subjunctive, you've got queira and queiram. Caso você queira, in case you want to. Vamos supor que vocês queiram comprar uma casa. Let's suppose that you guys want to buy a house. In the past subjunctive, it's quisesse and quisessem. Se eu quisesse, eu conseguiria. If I wanted it, I would get it. Eles podiam fazer o que quisessem. They could do whatever they wanted. Then in the future subjunctive, we've got quiser and quiserem. Se você quiser, pode vir comigo. If you want, you can come with me. Se eles quiserem, podem vir também. If they want, they can come too. Verb number 10 of the Dirty Dozen is saber, to know. In the present tense, we have sei, sabe, and sabem. Eu sei que é difícil. I know that it's hard.
Eu sei que vou te amar.
Ele não sabe nada. He doesn't know anything. Não sei se vocês sabem. I don't know if you guys know. In the past preterite, you have soube and souberam. Now, in the preterite, saber can often be translated as to hear or find out about something. Eu soube que ele queria falar comigo. I heard or found out that he wanted to talk with me. Vocês souberam o que aconteceu comigo? Did you guys hear what happened to me? In the past imperfect, sabia and sabiam. Eu não sabia o que fazer. I didn't know what to do.
Eu sabia que ele não ia voltar.
Vocês sabiam disso? Did you guys know that? In the future, vou, vai, and vão saber. In the conditional, you've got saberia and saberiam. Eu não saberia explicar isso. I wouldn't know how to explain that. Poucas pessoas saberiam explicar isso. Few people would know how to explain that. The present subjunctive, saiba and saibam. Vamos supor que você saiba falar chinês. Let's suppose that you know how to speak Chinese. Eu quero que eles saibam que. I want them to know that. In the past subjunctive, we have soubesse and soubessem. Eu não queria que ninguém soubesse. I didn't want anyone to know or find out. Eu queria que eles soubessem que. I wanted them to know that. Then the future subjunctive, souber and souberem. Ele vai ficar furioso quando souber disso. He's going to be furious when he hears about this. Quando eles souberem disso, vão ficar felizes. When they hear about this, they'll be happy. Number 11 on the Dirty Dozen is the verb ver, which means to see. In the present, you have vejo, vê, and veem. Eu não vejo você. I don't see you.
Agora vejo o mundo de uma outra maneira.
A gente não vê ninguém. We don't see anyone. Vocês me veem? Do you guys see me? In the past preterite, vi, viu, viram. Eu não vi nada. I didn't see anything. Você não me viu? You didn't see me? Eles ainda não viram as fotos. They still haven't seen the pictures. For the past imperfect, there's via and viam. Eu via o Marco todos os dias. I would or used to see Marco every day. Eles viam o Tiago direto. They would or used to see Tiago all the time. To express the future, vou, vai, and vão ver. In the conditional, we have veria and veriam. Se eu tivesse mais tempo, veria mais filmes. If I had more time, I would watch more movies. So ver can mean watch as well, in the sense of watching a movie. Se eles viajassem mais, veriam o mundo de uma outra maneira. If they traveled more, they would see the world differently. For the present subjunctive, you have veja and vejam. É importante que você veja o lado positivo. It's important that you see the positive side. Eu espero que vocês vejam meu amigo. I hope that you guys see my friend. In the past subjunctive, visse and vissem. Se eu visse o Paulo, eu não falaria com ele. If I saw Paulo, I wouldn't talk to him. Se vocês vissem o Gui agora, ficariam impressionados. If you guys saw Gui now, you'd be impressed. And then the future subjunctive is vir and virem. Se você vir o Marco, me avisa. If you see Marco, let me know. Se vocês virem o filme, vão chorar. If you guys see the movie, you're gonna cry. Now, that said, what you'll probably more likely hear in everyday speech is ver and verem, even though they're grammatically incorrect. And then finally, our last verb of the Dirty Dozen is trazer, to bring. In the present, you have trago, traz, and trazem. Eu sempre trago as bebidas. I always bring the drinks. Ele nunca traz nada. He never brings anything. Eles nunca trazem presentes. They never bring gifts. In the past preterite, you have trouxe and trouxeram. Eu trouxe os livros. I brought the books. Eles trouxeram muita comida. They brought a lot of food. In the past imperfect, we've got trazia and traziam. Eu sempre trazia as bebidas. I would or used to always bring the drinks. Eles nunca traziam presentes. They would or used to never bring gifts. In the future, vou, vai, and vão trazer. The conditional is traria and trariam. Se eu fosse você, eu não traria nada. If I were you, I wouldn't bring anything. Se eles pudessem, trariam tudo. If they could, they would bring everything. In the present subjunctive, you have traga and tragam. Eu espero que ele traga os livros. I hope that he brings the books. Eu não quero que vocês tragam nada. I don't want you guys to bring anything. The past subjunctive, trouxesse and trouxessem. Ele queria que eu trouxesse os livros. He wanted me to bring the books. Eu não queria que vocês trouxessem nada. I didn't want you guys to bring anything. And then in the future subjunctive, there's trouxer and trouxerem. Se eu trouxer minha amiga, você vem? If I bring my friend, will you come? Se eles trouxerem a amiga deles, eu venho. If they bring their friend, I'll come. So the 12 verbs that we just went over are also known as irregular verbs, since they don't follow a lot of the regular conjugation patterns. Now, these aren't the only irregular verbs in Portuguese, but these are the ones that you'll use most in everyday conversations. For example, two other irregular verbs that you'll eventually want to learn are dizer, to say or tell, and pôr, to put. The reason I decided not to include these in the tutorial is because in the spoken language, dizer often gets replaced by falar, and pôr usually gets replaced by colocar, both of which are regular verbs, and so they're easier to learn. So besides the dirty dozen, I wanted to point out a few commonly used verbs that we'll call semi-irregular verbs. These follow the regular conjugation patterns for the most part, but do have some quirks in the present tense. For example, the verb odiar, which means to hate. In the present tense, it's odeio, odeia, and odeiam. With ler, to read, you have leio, lê, and leem. For the verb rir, to laugh, you've got riu, ri, and riem. Likewise with sorrir, to smile, it's sorriu, sorri, and sorriem. Then you have some verbs that have quirks just in the I form of the present tense. For example, with the verb dormir, I sleep, is eu durmo. So the O changes to a U. For the verb sentir, I feel, is eu sinto. Here, the E changes to an I. You'll see this type of change in a lot of verbs like preferir, I prefer, is eu prefiro. Divertir, divirto. Seguir, sigo. And conseguir, consigo.
Hoje eu consigo entender o meu corpo melhor.
Some other changes you'll see are with the verb pedir. I ask for is eu peço. Ouvir, I hear, is eu ouço. And then perder, I lose, is eu perco. Now, there are a lot more verbs that have these types of quirks, but these are some of the more common ones that you'll come across in everyday speech. So the present subjunctive form for these verbs will be irregular as well. And the way you form them is by taking the I form of the present tense and changing the final O to an A. So for example, durmo becomes durma and durmam. Now let's take a look at the imperative or command form. In other words, how do we tell someone to do or not do something? So in standard Portuguese, the imperative is just the same as the present subjunctive. This is what you'll see in formal written communications like advertisements, signs, notices. So if you go to a company's website, on the contact page, it'll often say, fale conosco, speak with us. When you're in Brazil, you'll see the sign everywhere, pare, from the verb parar, to stop. In the spoken language though, people will often just use the regular present tense conjugation of você as the imperative. So for example, fala mais alto, talk louder. Compare that to the standard form fale, which would sound a bit more formal. Vem comigo, come with me.
Mano, vem comigo.
Compare vem with the standard venha. Now, if you want to tell someone, let's do something, all you do is say vamos and then add the infinitive. So, let's talk to him would be vamos falar com ele. Let's eat, vamos comer. Now, I want to talk about a really important concept called the personal infinitive. Let's take a look at this phrase. É importante falar português. It's important to speak Portuguese. So when a verb like falar is used in this context to make a general statement, it's called the impersonal infinitive. It's impersonal because it's not talking about anyone in specific. This is the quote-unquote normal infinitive that we've seen so far. But in Portuguese, the infinitive can also have a subject of its own. For example, é importante eles falarem português. It's important for them to speak Portuguese. Falarem being a form of the so-called personal infinitive. So you're actually conjugating the infinitive to agree with the subject, which in this case is eles. In other words, you're personalizing the infinitive. It's no longer a general statement, it's now specific to an individual, or in this case, individuals. So the forms of the personal infinitive are really simple. Regardless of the type of verb, the only thing that changes is in the third person plural, where you add an em at the end of the verb. So falar becomes falarem, comer becomes comerem, and decidir becomes decidirem. And this applies to all verbs in Portuguese. This includes those in the Dirty Dozen. With estar, you have estar and estarem, fazer, fazer and fazerem, and ter, ter and terem. So there are no irregular forms of the personal infinitive. Let's take a look at a few more examples. Acho melhor vocês não irem. I think it's better for you guys not to go. Acho bom a gente chegar lá cedo. I think it's good for us to get there early. Ele saiu sem eu saber. He left without me knowing. So we've just covered pretty much all of the verb forms you'll need to communicate in everyday conversational Portuguese. If you'd like to have a PDF guide of this tutorial for reference, you'll find the link below in the description. Now, if you want to make more sense of the pronunciation of what we just covered, check out my Intro to Brazilian Portuguese Pronunciation next. Obrigado.